Oh, hello. Good evening, and welcome to our first flipped lesson. We're going to be flipping our science today and learning about cells at home. Isn't that going to be flippin' cool? Because if you're flippin' watching this, get ready for a flippin' amazing adventure! Like all living things, cells are just smaller versions of things that we already know a lot about, like the human body. We know that the human body has a brain, and the brain is where all the amazing thought processes and the things that happen and control the body happen up here. Now, the brain, of course, has to have some sort of transport system, like the nervous system or blood cells and so on and so forth, and blood vessels, to transfer all that information down towards the rest of the body. If there wasn't a transport system, then really what's the point, right? I mean, it's just going to stay there in the brain, it's just going to do its own thing, and the brain's not going to talk to the body's not going to know what to do, and havoc reigns. Next we have our respiratory system. This guy here transfers all the information out to the different parts of the body so that the information gets transferred equally amongst all the divisions here. I don't think that's the best way to say it, but whatever, who cares? So all our oxygen and all the other things that we need, the blood pumps it through, transfers nutrients, so on and so forth. We also have an area to store, right over here, the stomach, to store things for either a later time or for later processing, and it happens in here. Here we have, in our lovely brown, our digestive system, which gets rid of waste and anything else that we don't need. It's a pretty simple diagram right there, but that's basically what the human body does and what most living things do. They have a control center, transport systems to transport information to the rest of the body. They also have vessels that transport nutrients and blood and oxygen and all the other vital nutrients, I guess, or proteins around to the rest of the body so that the body knows what to do. It has an area to store things in, and then finally has an area to get rid of waste. You'll see shortly how a cell can be the same way. Here's the cell. Not much going on. I mean, you'll notice again that the cell doesn't really have skin, so we're going to start from the outside and work our way in. It has what we've already called a semi-permeable membrane. The semi-permeable part means that some things can enter and some things can't. Now, we've already talked about what that does, and we've sort of seen how that works with our failed Friday activity there. That was kind of haggard. But the semi-permeable membrane allows certain things to come in, either based on size or based on messages from the cell itself. So that's how we begin. So again, things can get inside the semi-permeable membrane, even though I stuttered on that one, didn't I? JB, you're probably laughing. The semi-permeable membrane allows things to get in. It's not a closed-off cell. It's not a closed-off thing, so it's not like a plastic bag or something that doesn't allow things in. But it certainly has holes and gaps and blocks off certain other things. You'll notice here again that we have the brain. This is the control center, but for us, our purposes, it's called the nucleus. And again, didn't really fit on that page there. It's known as the nucleus. It's a control center. But again, if it didn't have any transportation system, then what's the point of having it in the first place? So that's what these guys on the outside are. These things are the endoplasmic reticulum. It's a really long word for this really, basically what is, I think I spelled that wrong, plasmic reticulum. It's just a transport system here to transport proteins and other bits of information out to the other parts of the cell. So essentially like blood vessels, like our, I guess, other transport, like nervous system and so on, any other messenger type system to send it back out there. Now you'll notice that there are these little red guys inside, right? And you'll notice there's also these red guys on the outside. These are called ribosomes. And I think we've talked about them briefly. That's one word, but I can't fit it all in there, sadly. These are known as ribosomes, and they create proteins. Sorry, I was talking about ribosomes before I had a phenomenal brain fart. Ribosomes create the proteins. Essentially, proteins are the messengers. They are the things that transfer information. They're the things that take different parts and chemicals and nutrients and transport them around the cell. Outside here, you'll notice that there's something called the mitochondria. Now, the mitochondria, again, is the power system. This mitochondria is like a battery, basically. It keeps the thing going. Like our body needs calories from food and nutrients, this is the thing that actually takes those and creates the energy that the cell needs to function on its daily activities and so on and so forth. You also notice here that there's something called the Golgi apparatus, this little red guy over here. Now I probably shouldn't have skipped over to the mitochondria. I think I forgot to spell that wrong again. Probably shouldn't have gone to the mitochondria. But the Golgi apparatus is essentially part of this ribosome endoplasmic reticulum transportation system. The Golgi apparatus actually labels things like a post office would, or packaging the proteins, or packaging the enzymes, or packaging items to send them around the cell. The great thing about the cell is that it's all this stuff is floating in cytoplasm. Now, unlike the human body that has to have a certain standard form, I mean, if we were just cytoplasm, we'd be like blobs on the ground and like all over the place, which would be kind of gross, but sort of cool, I guess. But basically all this stuff floats around in it. So whatever sort of proteins can float around, all this stuff can actually literally not stay stationary. It doesn't have to be where it is. Just unfortunately in our two-dimensional picture type world, I mean, we have to show you in a static version. But again, this vacuole could float around over here, and this stuff could float over here. This mitochondria might not be over there. Nothing is stuck where it is, which is sort of the cool thing about it, so that you don't have to have things like plasma. We have blood plasma, which is like cytoplasm, which allows things to sort of float around in it. Plasma is not blood, technically. It's that pale-colored, clear stuff that allows blood cells to sift through. But that's essentially what cytoplasm is. You'll see over here this lovely brown. These are called lysosomes. Lysosomes are basically the digestive system. Take cell debris or other bits of waste, process them, and then just chucks them out of the cell when it needs to get rid of it. So essentially the lysosomes get rid of all those things, those processes, and empties those things out. Over here we have the vacuoles that are like stomachs. And they store things in there, anything that's needed. And vacuoles can be created at any time that's necessary for a cell, as they consume food, at least for biological animals of those forms, like invertebrates and so on. They can create vacuoles at any time. More specialized cells within the human body still have vacuoles, and they may not necessarily create vacuoles to consume food or other necessary products, but probably nutrients to process them, depending on their specialization. So essentially, these are the parts of the animal cell that we really think about. Plant cells aren't too much different. Let's take a look. Now, if we had to compare those two cells together, the animal cell and the plant cell, the major differences are two things. One is the cell wall. As you notice, trees, unlike humans, are kind of stiffer, as it were. More tall, probably straighter, a little harder on the outside shell. But that's due mostly to the fact that there is a cell wall on leaves as well. Leaves are quite brittle if you take them, and not like our human skin, which is kind of soft and pliable. But there's a cell wall on the outer side, and this cell wall is what allows the tree to maintain its strength and form. You'll also notice that these green sacs right over here, these are called chloroplasts. Let's see if I can spell this right under pressure. These are called chloroplasts, and that's where chlorophyll is contained, and that's what allows the plants to transform carbon dioxide into oxygen. Essentially, it's also part of the nutrient process again, but again, it's the big difference. It's also what gives the green color to the leaves. If we had chloroplast, we'd be green. Thankfully, we don't have chloroplast, so we're not green. We'd look sick all the time. That would kind of be haggard. Okay. This is a picture of a nucleus. Again, it was taken with an electron microscope. Inside the nucleus, you can see that sort of this material in here as well. I believe it's called the nucleoid, or the nucleolus. Sorry, the nucleolus, not the nucleoid. And this nucleolus carries all that DNA and other material. Again, you sort of see the outer wall. It's a very defined sort of organelle. An organelle is basically what's inside a cell, like organs, except smaller versions. And so you can see that there's a wall, there's the nucleus. Here we have a picture of the endoplasmic reticulum. And you can see what's really great about this image is you can see that the fact that all these little transport paths like highways, roads, and streets. It really allows that information, or the proteins that carry the information, to travel around from, again, the center, which is the nucleus right over here, and transport it around the cell. Now, I don't know what this stuff is over here. These little round dealies. I guess I'll have to find out. Now over here, down here, right here, this is the Golgi apparatus down here. It looks a lot like the endoplasmic reticulum, which it pretty much should look like the endoplasmic reticulum, but this is where all the items and of protein and other things are packaged and sent and labeled so that they can be delivered out to the cell and do the job that it needs to do. These two guys are the mitochondria. These are our power centers, basically where all the energy for the cell is created and pushed out into the cell and allows it to do whatever it needs to do. Now in these final two images, I wanted you to really see the fact that cells are these three-dimensional objects. They're not flat the way that we sort of envision them in those flat pictures that we see. You can see how deep down the endoplasmic reticulum goes over here, and again you can see sort of the mitochondria. They're like these tubes, like pills really, with internal systems on the inside. And the nucleus, while it looks like a sphere, at least it has a three-dimensional shape. I want to remind you that cells are inorganic, which means they don't have a defined shape. They're not like squares or rectangles or anything. And for that reason, it allows them to float around in fluids. Here's another picture of a different looking cell, same animal cell nonetheless. But again, you'll notice that it doesn't have that same shape. You'll notice the 3D quality of all the little organelles on the inside. I really wanted you to know the fact that, again, cells aren't flat. You know, the items inside aren't tiny or flat. This is the endoplasmic reticulum right over here. This is the smooth endoplasmic reticulum. There's the nucleus where it should be. But again, I really, really wanted you to see how deep down it goes and how thick they really actually are. So that's pretty much the end of our first flip lesson. That was, other than some really bad flippin' brain farts, that was pretty flippin' cool. Your assignment now is going to be to take a look through the lesson again, if you want to or need to, or if you didn't take any notes while you were checking this video out the first time, which I probably wouldn't have, but you know, whatever. Your assignment is to now look around your house for found objects that you think could represent the different parts of a cell. Your group settings, your group tables, are going to figure out how to build a cell together using only found objects. This means looking around the house for things that might represent a semi-permeable membrane, things that might represent a nucleus, even the cytoplasm, the gel and the fluid that holds all the stuff, you know, into its shape and form inside the semi-permeable membrane. We can talk about more of that in class, but that'll be the assignment. So, ladies and gents, good luck, and we'll talk to you in the morning.